What's up, fam? This is your Professor Karriemah Lotus with a wonderful episode 5 of BBI Talks. And today's edition is very, very special to my heart. Recently, we have lost some beautiful, beautiful people who fought courageously in battling kidney disease. And so this episode is dedicated to those that we have lost, that we love, that we will miss, that we honor, and that we respect. And I dedicate this episode to Sister Sharifa Muhammad. May Allah be pleased. Just a quick personal testimony about this particular sister. I had the honor and the privilege of visiting her on a couple of occasions in the hospital. And, you know, we would go into the room and she was the most vibrant person in the room. And I remember asking, you sure she's not feeling well? Her spirits were just so vibrant. She was just so full of the spirit of Allah. And knowing that no matter what happened, Allah was sufficient. And I learned an invaluable lesson simply from her representation of one who was fighting. And so today I have another beautiful warrior with us. I've known this sister since college at Clark Atlanta University, CAU, HBCU. I'm telling you, we on the map. And I smile whenever I think of our beloved sister. She has experienced so much in life, but she has that same warrior spirit and resoluteness in the Creator to know that no matter what, God is sufficient. And so our sister was diagnosed roughly 2.5 years ago with kidney disease. And she has become the quintessential kidney disease patient advocate. I mean, sister hit the ground running, advocating for others who were fighting kidney disease. She is the proud mother of a beautiful young man. He is just an awesome warrior himself. And she is also currently on the transplant list. So for those of you who hear her testimony today, are inspired to reach out and to see whether or not you're compatible, I welcome you to do so. She is the author of A Warrior's Heart, which is a beautiful devotional. And I encourage you to pick it up and send it to your family members and your friends. You can find it on Amazon. I tell you, I could go on, but without further ado, my sister in spirit and in truth, and your sister, Sai Speaks. Yeah! How's my sister doing?
I am well. How are you, beloved?
I am fantastic, especially having my sister on the show. I just have one thing I got to do because, you know, we got to hit them off with the BBI talks before we get the conversation started, especially those on podcasts. You know the drill. You got a podcast. We're going to talk about that. Here is BBI Talks. Welcome, Sai Speaks.
Hey.
What's going on?
Nothing. Professor Karriemah, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I need you to speak a little bit louder because we're going in and out a little bit.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect. Perfect. I thank you so much for honoring me by being my guest on this show. We have so much ground we're going to cover, but as the advertisement promised, we have two feminine gods on the line, and we are going to bring the faith, the truth, and the story. And we're going to make sure that those who watch this show are fed, that they are informed, and that they're empowered. And so if you don't mind, I know you've probably shared this story millions of times, but I'm asking for those who just joining for the first time and being recently introduced to you, if you wouldn't mind sharing your story in the beginning of your journey as a warrior.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I don't mind sharing it because in the sharing, there is the opportunity to help save somebody else's life. I don't do this because I need a kidney only. I share my story because there's so many thousands who's on this journey, and I want to make sure that I represent them well. So it is a really funny story, right? I went April 2017 for my standard routine wellness checkup, our physical, something that we all should do yearly. Went, had my physical done, not expecting anything major to be wrong, just wear and tear of getting older, right? The gift of life that keeps on giving. Well, I got my physical done, and less than 24 hours later, I was receiving a panic phone call from my doctor telling me to get to the emergency room because I was in kidney failure. Now, if you would have saw me during that time, you would have never thought that was going to be the diagnosis. Only thing that was physically obvious was I was losing weight. So I thought maybe my thyroid was off, but I never thought my kidneys were failing. So I went to the emergency room. And when I got there, I told them, hey, my kidneys are failing. According to my doctor, I need to be checked in. They did the standard triage, let you in. My blood pressure was 200 something over 100. And it was really high, really critical. According to my levels, I should have been comatose. There was no way I should have been walking, talking, and definitely shouldn't have been driving myself to the emergency room.
Wow.
And yeah, so I went from thinking all is well to 24 hours later, I'm in the hospital for 5 days. They had to check my heart because when your blood pressure is that high, most of the times there's severe heart damage. So there was a lot of crisis going on. By the time I got to the hospital, my kidney function was only at 6%. We're supposed to operate at 100. I was operating at 6%, and that was both my kidneys.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, ma'am. So we had that, and once you get to a certain level with kidney failure, your body no longer on its own produces enough red blood cells. So I had to have 2 blood transfusions because at that level, I wasn't producing any red blood cells. I didn't even know that was possible, but I was not. So April 2017, here I was thinking I'm amazing because at that time I was a vegetarian. I was relatively active with exercising, things like that. So I was what they called healthy. So I thought doing what they said to do, yet I was in a fight for my life and I didn't even know it.
I mean, I'm amazed because what you're sharing, your story could be any one of us. And in preparation for this show today, I had the opportunity to read the statistics, to read, testimonials of other kidney warriors. And there are things that are linked to this disease that we would never imagine would bring you to the brink of almost not being here anymore. You would never think in a million years that it would be that serious, but it is. I know one thing that I didn't know is the connection between, like you said, the heart and the kidneys, blood pressure, diabetes. These are common things, especially in the Black community. But I never associated that with kidney disease. So I don't know if maybe you can kind of share, once you received this diagnosis, did you start to kind of go through your mind and say, man, did I miss any signs? Or as you began learning about the disease and how it functions, did you then start to realize what was the symptom along the way?
So here's the thing, and since we are two amazing, wonderful, beautifully Black women, I want to say something to our Black people now. Our dietary choices can be so critical to our kidney health because we have inherited some really bad eating practices and we have carried them on as tradition instead of saying, you know what, I love Big Mama. But Big Mama ate that way because that was all she had available to her at that time. But
That's
now
right.
I have more options and more means. Maybe I need to shift and adjust how I'm eating because the blood pressure and the diabetes have been linked so much to our diet that some of this is preventative. Now, some of it isn't, right? But a lot of this still is on our shoulders to be mindful of how we eat. Now, my particular situation, I was a premature child. My kidneys never fully developed. They didn't know that because in the 70s, they didn't do ultrasounds, but now they have found out I've never had fully developed kidneys.
Oh,
but,
wow.
Like I say, I don't share my story just for me. I share this because I want to, one, educate, but two, I want to prevent. I'm really tired of going to dialysis clinics and seeing people that look like me in all ages and stages sitting in that chair. We dominate those who are on dialysis. And we have to do better and do smarter with our lives. I think at times, because we have been deprived so much in this country, once we get a taste of stuff, we do it in excess. And I'm like, we are free indeed, but you still have to use wisdom and have some type of boundaries to govern yourself to ensure that your life is extended and you have a good quality of life. What good is to live and you're living hooked up to a machine or you're dependent on medication? So with the blood pressure and the diabetes, that is killing our community. And a lot of that has been linked to poor eating practices, large consumption of alcoholic beverages, and even smoking. I really stress when I go to a room to speak and they look like me, my conversation and my tone is a little different because I'm like, hey, we don't have to keep being the poster board for ill and poor health.
Right.
But let me tell you some of the signs. I used to have dull aches in my back.
Dull pains in your back.
In my back, like my back hurt. And you know, sometimes we're so used to thinking, oh, I've overexerted myself, I'm tired.
Right.
But it was my kidneys hurting. And one of the big, we don't know where our kidneys are located. So we be down here. No, it's usually a little further up, like right under your rib cage. If you have any pain, things like that, it's not always you pull the muscle or it's not that you're fatigued. You may need to go see the doctor. We don't drink enough water.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've met somebody who has kidney stones. Water consumption. We will consume the least amount of water. I've heard people say, well, I drink my water. Great, but I need you to drink your water as well. So it was the dull aching in my back. When I was lying down, I was having shortness of breath. I couldn't understand why it was hard for me to breathe. It was fluid building up in my body. We look for swelling, but not everybody swells who retains fluid. And I need people to know that if you're having shortness of breath when you're lying flat on your back, that's an indicator that there could be some fluid. Don't always wait for fluid.
So with or without fluid retention, and I'm also here on Instagram, and I thank y'all for joining me today on a wonderful edition of BBI Talks. Sister Sai Speaks was sharing some of the symptoms that she realized she had been experiencing all along before her diagnosis, and a part of that was talking about a dull pain in her lower back right underneath her rib cage. But but she also had fluid that was building up. So she noticed she got a shortness of breath. And even though she wasn't retaining fluid, she still was having that shortness of breath. And all of those are symptoms of kidney failure. So, okay, so you're experiencing these things, but not knowing what it's related to. When you get to the hospital and you receive the diagnosis, what happened then? Like, how does the healthcare provider bring you through this process? What does that look like for someone who is recently diagnosed?
You know, as I have been on this journey for a couple of years now, you know, all doctors are not created equally. They're just not. Some are really well versed and others are not. And unfortunately, the doctor who diagnosed me, even though he was scientifically brilliant, he lacked bedside manners. I was given this news 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was told your kidneys are shot. You need a transplant. That was exactly how he gave me the news. Now, if I wasn't the type of person that I am, that could have destroyed me right then and there.
Right.
But what the process looks like, they give you this diagnosis and they give you one or two options. They'll say you're experiencing kidney failure, dialysis is the next step. Now, everybody on dialysis isn't automatically eligible for a transplant.
Okay.
So sometimes they tell you about transplant, sometimes they don't right away because they're trying to see how your body responds to dialysis and how critical your levels are as far as toxins in your body, how well you're responding to dialysis, and also if you have any other underlying illnesses that will make you ineligible for a transplant. So immediately you're given the diagnosis. If your levels are critical, you will start dialysis, emergency dialysis in the hospital, and they will put a catheter in your neck and you will receive dialysis that way. For me, I didn't have to start dialysis until 6 months later. So I had a fistula. I don't know if you can see it. I had a fistula put in my arm. It's this is my natural vein. So they cut my vein and my artery and joined them together to puff it up so they can stick the needles in. But some people don't have this naturally, so they put a plastic graft in to do the same purpose.
Wow.
So yeah, you start dialysis almost after the diagnosis is dialysis. Now, some people have been very fortunate to go straight from diagnosis to actually finding a transplant. That's rare, but it does happen.
And let's talk about that, because this gets to the meat of some of the things that we're going to cover in terms of Black, the business of Black illness. And we have to understand that there is a lot of money linked to things that we could actually address ourselves in a preventative way. There's an article that I found entitled "Low Income Linked to Higher Levels of Kidney Disease in Black African Americans, Black Americans." And the study included 2,200 Black and white adults living in cities across the United States. Participants underwent extensive laboratory testing, including markers of kidney disease, and answered questions about their income and their health. This is really interesting. We need to pay attention to this because it kind of it's going to touch on to a point that you made earlier. Results showed that African Americans who had incomes of less than $20,000 had more than 3 times the risk of excessive protein in the urine, which is an indicator of chronic kidney disease. Then African Americans earning more than $75,000, right? So there's the income disparity even among ourselves. Right. These findings were adjusted for age, sex, diabetes, high blood pressure, and lifestyle factors such as obesity and smoking. Those with incomes between $20,000 and $35,000 had more than double the risk of kidney damage when compared to higher income African Americans. this trend was not seen among whites. So that means that whites who are in poverty do not see this uptick in kidney disease or kidney failure as we do in our community.
Right.
So then they came to this realization or conclusion. It's possible that cultural differences, especially in dietary habits, may be at play, as well as lack of access to healthier food options. This is Dr. Cruz. Environment could be another major factor, as well as the psychological stress of poverty, which may be different for African Americans. Well, we can say it's not maybe different. It is different. It's definitely different. And so I just wanted to kind of share that with the viewers. Some of the statistics: African Americans develop kidney failure at rates that are 3.5 times greater than white Americans. And African Americans constitute over 31% of all patients in the US receiving dialysis for kidney failure, but only represent 13% of the overall US population. So we are absorbing disproportionately a lion's share of treatment that needs to be done. So let's talk about this diet for a minute, because I think it's important that we start highlighting. You talked about alcohol consumption, smoking, but let's talk about this diet, especially now on the verge of so-called Thanksgiving, right? And we may not be going to Big Mama's house, but many of us are asking for Big Mama's recipes right about now. Okay. Right. And so it's important, hey, I'm a killjoy, y'all. Y'all gonna be looking at your Thanksgiving dinner and you're gonna be like, dang. But it's important that we understand what works for us and what doesn't. Right. So if you can kind of give some examples, Sai Speaks, as to what are some of the things that we've learned to eat that is just not in our best interest.
Ooh. About to kill all of your Thanksgiving dreams right now. But
kill it.
You have your collard greens, but you gotta, right? If you grew up where we grew up and how we grew up, you just can't have collard greens. You have to have them seasoned with piece of pork. You got salt pork. You have bacon. You have that meat, that greasy meat in your greens. Then you have the ham. You have ham. Okay, you have the pies, that crust with all the butter. Some use lard, all that. That's not what you want. Now, here's the one that most people do like is not so harmful: potato salad.
Really?
White potatoes. The starch and the potassium is hard on our bodies. It is, and that was like, I didn't know that. Now, some people freestyle. Some people have chitlins with their Thanksgiving meal. Our holidays, you would think would be the time where we have so much excessive fatty foods. But just look at the day-to-day. Some of us consume fried chicken on a regular. Now, I'm not saying don't eat your fried chicken, but it can't be all the time.
Right.
You have fried chicken. First of all, fried foods, not just chicken, fried foods is very hard. And one thing, as a kidney warrior, meat in itself is very hard for the kidneys, normal kidneys. Our bodies have to work extra harder to digest and break down all that meat consumption. So anything that you're...
And I want to clarify something. You're saying even while you're battling kidney disease, any meat, meaning chicken, fish, turkey, all of it is no good.
Any meat. I'm saying I'm going to eat meat. Don't let it be 3 times a day, 7 days a week. You have to give your kidneys a rest, especially if you're a kidney disease warrior. Now, some people may not agree with that. But I'm telling you what the nutritionist, what the dietitian has shared and explained, your body works in overtime to digest meat. And when your kidneys are compromised, that's really hard on them. And there is a scientific link for kidney warriors that our bodies tend to do better when we have a plant-based vegetarian diet.
Got you.
So yeah, so meat for kidney warriors, it has to be lean, and it shouldn't be 7 days a week, 3 times a day.
Well, it's amazing because one of the things I'm thinking about is the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, How to Eat to Live. And, you know, people laugh at how to live and, you know, and what's in it. But some of the things, especially when you're talking about that potato salad and the pork and the whole nine, you know, the first thing he took us off of obviously was the pork. But then after that, anything white. So no white rice. We brown our rice. And that's the difference between browned rice and brown rice. They're not the same. He took us off the white potatoes. He took us off the white sugar. And so white flour, you know, and it's strange because now people are starting to talk about vegetarianism more in our community, which I'm pleased to hear. I also hear a lot of vegan talk. I'm not necessarily a big fan of a vegan diet, but I respect what people choose for themselves. Ultimately, it's in their quest to be healthier, ideally, right?
Right.
The business, well, I want to ask you now in the midst of a pandemic, and something happened that was very disturbing to me to watch, but I'm grateful that you took it upon yourself to share it with us. But recently, you were in crisis, and I wanted to ask if you can kind of share that story with our viewers, because one of the things that we just don't think about is, okay, those who are experiencing or battling a chronic ailment, where does that fit in the overall context of COVID-19 pandemic? So if you wouldn't mind sharing that story with us.
Absolutely. So back in August, I was experiencing some abdominal pain that had me to the point where I could not walk. I reached out to a specialist for help because I knew I needed help. Now, as a kidney warrior, and I am considered end-stage renal disease, meaning I really don't have much kidney function left, so I need special help. I'm considered top of the list if I have medical needs. Reached out to the specialist for help, and she didn't want to see me in person. She said, due to COVID, I can talk to you over the phone.
Wow.
And I'm like, ma'am, it's not a telehealth emergency. This is a life, I need to see you in person emergency. So my dilemma was, you're trying to tell me in the midst of COVID-19, those of us who are battling a chronic illness, we don't matter. Because if you haven't noticed, COVID-19 has dominated everything, and that's big business. No matter what you go to the medical room for, I mean, the emergency room, doctor, you're going to get COVID testing because that's big business right now. That's the hot ticket item. You could be like, I'm coming here because my toe hurts, but you're going to get a COVID-19 testing. So I was literally in crisis and need, and they would not see me because of COVID-19. I had to put myself at risk and go to the emergency room because my immune system is very sensitive. My doctor has to be very precautious where I go, especially when there's a crowd and there's a great risk that COVID-19 cases are evident. And the hospital is a hot spot. But I was in medical crisis and I needed to be seen. But they did not want to see me in person. Like you and I are doing this Zoom, that's how they want to diagnose me. Even though I talked to them, and my doctor called and was like, she cannot walk. She is struggling to walk. She's in so much pain. She needs to be by you. They was like, I can't see her because of COVID-19. She's not an existing patient. We're not accepting new patients.
So your other doctor informed the hospital that you were unable to walk that you were in crisis, and because of COVID, they were still refusing to see you in person.
They told me, they said, well, we can give you an appointment. It was 2 weeks away.
A virtual appointment.
A virtual appointment for 2 weeks later.
4 months later.
With COVID-19, people like myself and other chronic illness warriors, we are being bumped all over the place because of COVID-19. Even the medications we are using are now being pulled and used for COVID-19. At one point, there was a shortage of dialysis supplies because people, unfortunately, who had COVID was also experiencing temporary kidney failure. So now we were competing with COVID survivors to get the supplies we use every day.
The limited supplies.
Limited supplies. Yes, ma'am.
That is just, I mean, I'm truly beyond words.
But it's about money. I have, unfortunately, seen, even before COVID, that we are not seen as people. We are seen as a check. For dialysis,
I'm sorry. Can you repeat what you just said? Because you're coming in and out.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can.
I was saying, even before COVID, we chronic illnesses, we are not seen as patients or even people. We're seen as checks. We're walking dollar signs. I don't know how much they're receiving.
Oh, I can tell you how much they're receiving per person because I wanted to know as well. Oh yeah, no, we have to get into this. Prior to the Affordable Health Care Act, they have an account that was published in khn.org news where the Valentines, because they did not have insurance, the dialysis company charged them directly. I'm going to read this little snippet here. Fresenius, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, that's one of two national dialysis companies, billed the Valentines for $524,600.17. This is an amount that is more than the typical cost of a kidney transplant. The Fresenius charged the Valentines $13,867.74 per dialysis session, or about 59 times the $235 that Medicaid pays for the actual dialysis session. And that only cleared him through 14 weeks of dialysis treatment. That is outrageous. Outrageous.
So let me, just to put some more context on that. If a person goes to dialysis and they just receive dialysis without any additional medicines being needed, the base is $6,000 for one session. But no dialysis patient is just able to go and sit in that chair without getting iron, heparin. There's so many other medications that people are on. I know for myself, I took 2 every time. So mine went from 6 to 8,000, 2 additional medications added. So the base is $6,000 alone per session. And everybody that goes to the clinic is 3 times a week. So they're getting at least 18 per person per week.
So that's about $24,000 a week in dialysis sessions for any given patient.
And mind you, the clinic that I went to was small. It only had 17 chairs, but some could have up to 30.
So 17
And there's
chairs,
2 to 3, and
three
it's 2
times a
to
week
3,
at $8,000 a session minimum.
and it's 3 shifts per day. Some have 2, some have 3.
An
So
outrageous amount of
they're
money.
making money. They're making money.
Well, let's talk
I
about.
get iron.
You do get iron with your treatment
Yes, and that's $800.
by itself, just the iron.
I
So, I mean, I just want to say, those of you who are on Instagram, I thank you for joining BBI Talks. Those of you on Facebook and on YouTube, thank you very much for joining this program. I'm just blown away at not just the amount of money that's being made off of us as a people, but our complete ignorance to it. You know, and a lot of these diseases, with the exception of your particular case, because that was at birth, but it does say to me, when we do have when we deliver our babies, to have these types of things checked out and continue a plan of action of talking to our pediatrician about what that may mean in long-term care of our children. It's important to understand that dynamic. But for those of us who may develop this disease as a result of things that are completely preventable, we definitely need to pay attention to this. And because we may find we are already going down that road. I want to talk about these companies. There's 2 companies in particular that dominate this industry. According to an article, it was actually published at a Los Angeles Times, entitled "Dialysis Firms Are Obscene." That's the name of the article. What will happen if California tries to cap them? And it was regarding a petition for a bill that they were trying to have passed. The worst maladies of the American healthcare system are related to corporate profits. The competition among insurance companies to avoid the sickest customers and extract the most money from the rest, and the rise of for-profit healthcare providers. In few fields do those factors come together as neatly as they do in the dialysis business. And a business it is, a terrifically profitable one. The 2 dominant for-profit dialysis firms are the Denver-based DaVita and a German-owned Fresenius that report pre-tax operating profits in the billions. In the billions. 10 billion to be exact. So DaVita earned about 1.8 billion in pre-tax operating profit on a $10 billion in dialysis revenue. And Fresenius reported pre-tax operating profit of 2.3 billion on dialysis revenue of $11.7 billion just in North America alone. And when you factor that we are 31% of the patients that are receiving treatment in these facilities, it is something that we definitely need to take another look at. So now, Sister Sai, what do you do now? What is the next step? What do you think is the way forward for those who are battling kidney disease?
One, I really believe there has to be some self-advocacy and some education. I have seen so many people just blindly accept all type of pills, medications, treatments, and never ask any questions. I mean, what a way. to try medications and new vaccines on people who's already in a medical treatment program, right? And
We can,
sometimes
we,
they use
we need you to talk a little louder. I'm sorry, sweetheart.
I'm sorry, what did you hear?
We're going to have to ask you to start over if you don't mind, because it was very
Okay.
faint.
Nope. Okay, no problem. I was saying it has to be a lot of self-advocacy and a lot of education.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of times fellow warriors are so trusting and they just accept and take any and all type of medications that the doctors recommend. And
Mm-hmm.
I always say before you take a medication, make sure it's something you truly need. That's that's the first place. Just because you're battling kidney disease or any other chronic illness, know what works best for your body, know what you need and what you truly don't need. I have been offered so many type of vaccinations and medications, and they had absolutely no benefit for me as a kidney warrior. But because
Mm.
we're already in a medical treatment facility, we're prime, we're right for the. Most people, unfortunately, in this particular predicament, and they just want to feel better. So you can pretty much offer anything. You know, I realize everybody doesn't handle this journey like myself. That's why I try to be as vocal as possible because we can get to the point where we're so tired of being sick that we'll take any placebo if it says it's going to bring relief.
Mm.
And I offered to be a part of the trial for COVID-19. Now, some people are like, oh my God, you should have done it. My personal conviction said absolutely not. So the first step, before you accept any new treatment, any form of medication, do your own research. Don't just blindly trust the word of what somebody else has told you. Because no matter how amazing your doctor and your medical team is, they're not sitting in the chair. They're not the ones going through treatment. And I always tell my doctor, I love and I thank God for you, but you still get paid off of my illness. So I can
Mm.
only take your advice far without making sure I do my own due diligence.
That's right.
I'm not, don't do what they say, right? That's not, this is my disclaimer. Do what's best for you. But personally, side speaks, any medication, any treatment, any recommendations that I receive from my medical team, I always get a second opinion and I do my own research. And then I make an educated decision. I try to no longer make emotional out of despair choices for my life.
Mm.
And that's so important for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Next
I like
step.
that. Unemotional yet informed decisions.
Yes, ma'am. And Resenius and DaVita are the two largest for-profit dialysis clinics. But you know, there's a couple of new up and coming people, and you have to be mindful. Why is this such a push?
Mm-hmm.
So, watch what's being built in your neighborhoods, in your communities.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually an indicator of that. There's a lot of fast food restaurants, but no healthy grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
It's low end restaurants and grocery stores that unfortunately have been placed in predominantly Black neighborhoods or
Right.
neighborhoods where people of color live and maybe their median of income is not as high.
Right.
So it has to be a retraining of the mind that just because you may not be wealthy does not mean you have to live off of scraps. You have
Mm-hmm.
to learn to be resourceful and you can really turn things around for your good. And another thing, don't be afraid to go to the doctor. A lot of times we don't go, we will self-diagnose. And when we do go to the doctor, it's usually because it's too late. So we
Mm.
want to be preventive and proactive and not reactive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to make sure that those who are listening know how they can get in contact with you, how they can find you. I can tell you our sister delivers every week on her podcast. And what day and time can they check you out on your podcast? Living Life Out Loud?
Tuesday, yes, Living Life Out Loud with Side Speaks. Every Tuesday at 9 a.m., there's a new episode. It is me navigating life as a kidney warrior, refusing to be beat down by a chronic illness. Because if I lived based on my diagnosis, I would be in the bed right now. So I refuse to do that. And I just want to show people that you can still live a full and amazing life, even battling a chronic illness.
Absolutely. And she does. And her podcasts, they're informative, they're I mean, just heart-filled, they're spiritual, and some of them are funny. Oh my gosh, some of them really are comical. And I love that you bring a more holistic view of what's happening with you, because sometimes it's not all fun and games. Sometimes there is a real struggle, but the fact that you strive hard to bring balance to your life and balance to your experience, to your journey, is inspiring. And I venture to say that with this podcast, even if you are not a kidney warrior, it's still a wonderful podcast to watch and to learn from. And you have guests on there with you, and it's awesome. You can find it on Anchor. It's also on Spotify and Apple. So please check out Living Life Out Loud, Sai Speaks. And then the devotional. Now, I bought this devotional as a gift for a special sister. Unfortunately, she made her transition before I had an opportunity to give it to her. But the devotional itself is absolutely beautiful. It's entitled A Warrior's Heart. So I want you to speak to it. Why a devotional?
Well, for me, that just made perfect sense because this whole journey has been a faith walk for me.
Yes.
I am a living, breathing testimony that God still saves and He's still a healer. And even when it doesn't look like how I want it to look like, He still shows up in such a miraculous way for me. And I wanted people to see all of that. In the devotional, I do give scripture and I share a tidbit of my story, but I also end it with a positive affirmation because I believe the weight of our words can create the life and the reality of the life we live. So I wrote the devotional because I wanted people to understand that life can be hard, but how it plays out is totally up to you. Like I said, I could have taken this diagnosis and just said, you know what, I give up and allow nature to take its course and transition out of here. But I know that's not the end of my story. And I'm like, I'm not selfish. I wanted to bring so many people along with me to show them that victory is still possible, even when your body feels like it's betraying you.
And having a long and full life is indeed in your future. It is in your present. I believe that you will receive the transplant that you are in need of, and that you will be a kidney warrior survivor, and you will give this testimony before the world that you have been healed. And that is my prayer, and that is my vision for your life. And I pray that it is in fact pleasing to Allah, that He will grant it so. I thank you so much, Sister Sorrell, for Sister Sai Speak. Look, I know her. I know my sister.
You know me.
I thank you so much. Oh gosh, for a long time. And I thank you so much for, like I said, for coming on this show, for sharing your journey with us. I have been moved and touched in ways that I can't even express to you. My prayers are always with you, always with your son, who has been with you every step of the way. And I pray that those who are watching will be touched in a similar way, and that we'll really begin to take our health more seriously and be more vested in the healing of ourselves as well as others. And I want to give a quick highlight of, there's a sister in our community, Sister Dawn Muhammad, who was a kidney donor for her father. And it was successful. And he is vibrant. And he is so appreciative of his daughter. She actually went through the process of, trying to get to a healthy weight and following the requirements of being a donor. And I mean, just to see that testimony, I think it's important to highlight that. Absolutely. And they are just so happy and just so at peace and so healthy and just living life till its fullest. And I'm very, very happy for their family. And I just wanted to share that story with you. And I would love for y'all to meet. I think that would be a beautiful experience for both of you. So thank you for being with us, Sister Sai Speaks. Please don't forget to check out her podcast, Living Life Out Loud, Sai Speaks. You can check out A Warrior's Heart, her book, on Amazon. So please, while you're getting your gifts, give the gift of a devotional. And I appreciate you being on. Do you have any last minute thoughts or things that you want to share before we close out?
Absolutely. Two things. First, just thank you so much. You have been amazing and loving since we've been in college. I thank God for our friendship. I thank God for how you are so determined to showcase Black excellence. And I appreciate you for that. And
thank you.
I just love you. And you are
I love you
a phenomenal
too.
woman, a phenomenal friend. And it is my honor to say that is my friend. So I love you dearly.
Love you too.
Please, whenever you go to get your physical, whether for yourself or your babies, make sure you ask them to test your kidney function. They do a very standard testing, but you can ask them to do more, and it is covered.
Okay.
You always want to know what's going on ahead of time. It may not be anything, but it's still a peace of mind to know that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I thank you for that. And I received that, and I will get on that. And I pray that you will do the same. Those who are watching, to really to get that additional testing to make sure that everything is what it should be. Thank you. And I love you too. Mwah. And you have always been my sister, always been my heart. And I know everybody's like, come on, y'all mushy. Yeah, but that's my sister. So I'm going to love on her. That's my sister. And I think, matter of fact, Tamora is also watching. What's up, Mo from Chicago, one of our Karriemah University colleagues and friends and sisters. And we're all just one great big family. She says she loves you, and we love you too, Big Mo. And so it's great when family reunites and we have this opportunity to have a conversation. I pray this is not going to be the last time that you join. I would love for you to come back so we can chop it up some more and really continue to share and shed light on the way forward with being a kidney disease warrior. Okay. This is BBI Talks. I'm your Professor Karriemah Lotus. Thank you for checking us out. We are also extending the opportunity for those of you who are interested in sponsorship. So if you have a business and you want me to give your business a shout out, please take a look there with information, yearoflotus@gmail.com. It is a monthly rate that is very reasonable, and there are no contracts involved. But we would love to promote your business and also help to keep BBI Talks going. Everything costs money. It's real. We're in a capitalistic society. So as much as I would love to be able to offer this at, free to you and all that, we still need the support of the community. So we're asking for you to give love offerings, or if you're interested in becoming one of our wonderful BBI Talk sponsors, we would appreciate it. Once again, we are out of here. Peace, fam.